Hello, everybody, and welcome into another season preview show with the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and I've got Mike Fink here for the New York Islanders as we keep previewing the season coming up after a very quiet offseason, it seems, unless there's a bunch happen that we have happening. But, Mike, how's it going?
Oh, I'm good. It's good to be back. It's another season and ready for there's a little bit of optimism this time with the Islanders. Just a new fresh feeling in the air. So it's nice. How are you doing, Matthew?
I'm doing great. Like I said, the offseason has been a little slow, which is like, I don't know. It seems like it's been the slowest it's been a long time, but lots of stuff happened in the beginning of July, nothing much. Some, but that's basically it's all that's really happened. But yeah, well, the Islanders did do some stuff. They of course got the first overall pick. Got Matthew Schaefer, and he's probably going to play this season. And they also got a few different forwards. So we'll start with the forward group now. And free agent Jonathan Drouin was signed in free agency. And then they made the big trade, trading Noah Dobson and getting Emil Heineman amongst some other pieces there, but he was the forward that came back in it. Didn't get any defensemen, so they didn't replace Dobson. But let's start with those new forwards, and you can go talk on each of them. Shabanov was, of course, signed from the KHL, one of the top free agents from the KHL there. What do you think about these three guys getting added to the forward group?
The big one seems to be Drouin because he could play a top six role. His ceiling is that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's more of a middle six type of player. Other than that, Heineman's more of the fourth line type of player. He kind of is a stopgap option. There's a possibility he plays a lot of time in the AHL too. He's part of the return in the Dobson deal. And I wonder how, there's a ceiling for him to be a reliable depth scorer there, but I don't, you wonder what he's going to end up looking like there. And then the wild card is Shabanov, who you look at his KHL highlights, and like any KHL player who comes over, their highlights look great because it's a different league. It's a lot more of that, like not north-south as much as just the speed of the league is so emphasized. And Shabanov's this great skater. He's smaller, so he'll probably get pushed around the season. But if they can give him those open looks and open space, there's a good chance he'll be a great part of that forward unit and possibly a top six player and really take that offense up a notch. And that forward unit needs a player who can add that element of speed along with Barzal is really the only like burner in terms of speed. So you have the I guess you have a little bit of that mix of risk and safe bets in that forward unit, but with the new additions, but it's intriguing. I'll say that. I don't know if they're going to be a great forward unit, but it's going to help for sure.
Mm-hmm. Like you say, Shabanov could potentially break out and be like, look at what Kuzmenko did in Vancouver and is coming over as one of the top KHL guys. So you never know if he maybe does that. That'd be pretty crazy. Kuzmenko, of course, hasn't done that since, but I don't know. We'll see what happens with those three. For the rest of the forward group, beyond the new additions, what do you think are big storylines, burning questions going into this season? Pretty much the core is still there, right? Barzal, Bo Horvat, John Gabriel Pajot, those three centers are still, and Barzal kind of flips between the two. But what do you think about the whole forward group in general?
I think I'd say the big question or burning question or the big storyline is who's going to play that. What's that second line look like / who's that second line center? They traded Brock Nelson away. And if you move Barzal to that second line center role, then okay, who's going to be that facilitator for Horvat? You either way put yourself in this dilemma. And I think that's kind of the burning question there. The other big picture issue with this forward unit is it's good, not great, where Horvat, Barzal, they give you a higher floor. Their ceiling, again, when they get in, like they can make it to the playoffs, but that ceiling is it good enough to get you on a run? Not really. So other big part of this is if they can get a forward in there who does take that unit up a notch, whether it's through the pipeline or through a trade. But because right now it's a good unit, not a great one. You have your core there. It's a good core. It's just not a great core. It's not a core that's gonna blow anyone away. And the offense has been below average, I think, in each of the past 5 or 6 seasons. It hasn't eclipsed the 3.0 the 3 goal per game mark. So that's I guess your bar for average or not. And that's really the big question is it going to be great? And I mean, that's the other part to that. You talk about Drouin and Shabanov coming in. Is the depth good enough to make up for that? Which it could be. There's a good chance it could be that way. You just have to hope. You really have to hope the depth is there, because your ceiling isn't that great when you don't have those true star. You have good players, not star players that can take over games per se.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a pretty good top 6, but like you said, it's not. We'll talk about matching up with the division later, but yeah, there are some guys that can score, but like you say, under 3 goals a game is you're banking on your defense and goaltending a lot more than you probably should, which we'll talk about now. And that's, the defense is, I don't know if it's not saying it's pretty much the same, because Noah Dobson is gone. He's not leading the way anymore. He was the Islanders' best defenseman. But they do have a new guy, and that's Matthew Schaefer, first overall pick in 2025. Most likely he will be playing this season. What do you think about him? I mean, I know we talked about him at the draft and stuff, but do you see him making a big difference on defense to start in his rookie season?
First of all, the question is whether he's there or not, which is it's a question onto itself whether he actually does start the season in the NHL. He's talented enough to do that, and I think at the end of the day, they'll probably want him on the roster in day one. He's 18, and defensemen take time to develop, even elite defensemen like Schaefer. I don't think he'll make an impact right away, like day one. I mean, as optimistic as high as his upside is, and he's one of those defensemen that checks off all these boxes. From day one, he's not going. It's just such a hard position to learn from, especially the OHL to the NHL. Sometimes even the AHL to the NHL is that big adjustment. So I see him more of, he'll be on the roster day one. He'll probably be on that third pairing to start with Mayfield, which is a good way to ease him into the lineup, where you put him with a veteran. The Islanders did that with Noah Dobson back in the day, where they had him on the same pair as Andy Green or Zdeno Chara, where you're just getting him those minutes with a veteran who can help him out. And maybe next season is where he really takes strides. In terms of really taking over games and being that defenseman that does that, I don't think he's there yet. And I think we really look at maybe next season or the season after that. But I mean, he obviously has the talent to do that. So if he is, it really changes the complexion of your unit, where you have a top pair defenseman who can take up all that ice time and really impact the game in multiple ways. You look at Makar, Quinn Hughes, the way they impact games and get all that and really take up that ice time, make up for a defensive unit that probably isn't good around those guys. So I think that's the down the road plan for him. I don't see it this season. I think the bigger question is, do you want to bring him to the NHL and potentially mess with his development or his confidence, or do you want to kind of say, take the season off, develop more, and then come in potentially in April or late in the season, and then you work from there? We're still preparing for training camp, so all this is up in the air.
Yeah. Oh, too bad that new rule wasn't already established, where you can have an 18-year-old in the AHL, right? It's
probably going to be like they're probably going to change all this in a few years, once, like, with the whole NCAA like paying players and stuff, or whatever it is that they're doing now. All these rules are probably going to fall through pretty quickly, but I digress.
For sure. All right, well, big question is, their defense, which, I mean, doesn't have Noah Dobson, like we mentioned. Is this going to be a by committee now? I mean, they didn't get anyone to replace him. Like, Matthew Schaefer is probably not going to do it right away. are you worried about the defense without him there? Because they don't have anyone that's like him, really. Is that the biggest question going in?
The biggest question for sure is the scoring from the defense. There's no offense at that blue line right now. Maybe because Romanov is really about as a stay-at-home defenseman as you can get. He's about as true a stay-at-home defenseman. Ideally, you want someday that he would be on the same pair as Schaefer, because Schaefer's that two-way player and he's a stay-at-home defenseman. Pelech and Pulock have declined a bit and they've been battling injuries in recent seasons, so they're not the same type of defenseman. They're good also shutdown defenseman, so Scott Mayfield. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you don't have that scoring at the blue line. They hope Schaefer is that. It's hard to see him being that this year. Maybe there's a chance Isaiah George can do that. I don't see that. They could give him those minutes where he's maybe quarterbacking the power play or whatever it is. But other than that, yeah, there's not the scoring from this unit. I think defensively they should be fine. They'll be at least better defensively with the group they have, especially if it stays healthy. And now that there's reinforcements, they have Tony DeAngelo, who actually will probably play some power play minutes, speaking of which. So it's going to be better defensively, I think, or it's going to be good defensively. It's just there's not going to be that scoring from the point. And it really trickles into the forward unit, which is where's the offense coming from? And when you don't have that defenseman that opens things up, it really sets you back. And we might see that this year from the Islanders offense because of that.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because, like you say, the defense just doesn't have a lot of scoring at all now that Dobson isn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all kind of plays out there. Well, speaking of keeping the puck out of the net now is the goaltending, which, I mean, really hasn't changed. They did add David Rittich, which we talked about in free agency when they did sign him, that could this mean that Varlamov is maybe not healthy, stuff like that. But Sorokin's still the guy. Is this goaltending? I mean, this is probably the least question mark you got on the team with the goaltending here.
Yeah, if there's one thing we've learned in recent seasons, there are actually two things. One, Sorokin's elite. He's an elite goaltender. Two, he can't be the only goaltender on your team. He does need that. He does need that backup to give him that occasional night off, where if they're playing a 3 and 4, he's got to get one of those nights off. That's the kind of split you're looking at with Sorokin. You can lean on him. You can't just, you have to have a good enough defense in front of him, but just to make sure that he's not getting burned on every single rush or every single shift. But yeah, Sorokin, you can lean on him. Rittich being brought in is kind of like, okay, he'll start a few. He'll be the backup, presumably. I think Varlamov, the question is how healthy he is, / if he'll be ready for the season when it begins. So with that in mind, you're probably looking at Rittich splitting starts with him. I don't think you can be that optimistic with Rittich as a backup, but he could be a good stopgap option. And what's good about that is if Varlamov is back at some point or is ready, then he could split the start, or he can be the backup. And then Rittich goes to the AHL, which helps out your team there. And they could use the help there too. They could use the help there, actually, more than the NHL. We don't need to dive into that team, but needless to say. So I think overall, goaltending is better. You got to credit Darsh for actually bringing in a backup, because there's no telling if Lamoriello would have done that. And he's bringing that reinforcement, which is going to make them a competitive team this year, or good enough this year, I think.
Yeah, like you say, the goaltending you need another guy now. In the league now, you can't just have a guy like, well, Hellebuck, I guess, is the only the only exception to that rule, right?
I think it's a ton. You need a goaltender that can not split where it's 41-41 as much as Sorokin will go 50, and you need someone who goes 30. I mean, even with Hellebuck, you probably want to say give him more nights off, because he just looks burnt out in the playoffs. So it's a better strategy overall, just for the regular season, to split starts, get yourself into the playoffs, and then ride your star goaltender then. But I digress on that.
Agreed. Yeah, and Sorokin can definitely carry the load quite a bit, but yeah, he definitely needs his rest as well. All right, let's look at the division. I mean, I've already done previews for a couple Metro teams, and saying that they're probably the Islanders are in that wild card middle area. Do you see that? Is that where the Islanders kind of are? Are they in a playoff picture, but not like division? They're more wild card area. Pretty much what they've been the last few seasons.
This division's been the same, it feels like, for the past few seasons, where you have your borderline cup contenders, like 2 or 3 of them at the top. This season is probably the Hurricanes, Devils, maybe the Capitals. Capitals are a little bit of an unknown just because they surprised everyone last season, so maybe they take a step back this year, but at the same time, they could be a cup contender again. Mm-hmm. Then you have your middle tier, which is, a lot of teams in the middle, and you have your 1 or 2 teams that are going to be at the bottom. In this case, it's the Penguins. They're going to be, they're going to be probably, they're going to be in last and in that tank war or whatever you want to call it. They're in the middle of an interesting mix because I think the Flyers are going to be better this season. I like what is going on there with their youth movement, and their prospect development has been interesting, and they brought in Rick Tocchet. I'm sure when Justin's on, you'll have a much deeper discussion on that. I mean, he does the Flyer stuff, I believe. But there's the Blue Jackets are an interesting team there. They're in that same mix. I think there's so they can be a wild card team. I think if they make the wild card, which would be a nice surprise for them. That would be nice, but that would be a pleasant surprise for them. But the big picture for them is this is like almost like a year where you kind of feel things out, and then Darsh really makes his mark on the team, and really whether he's bringing in talent or the prospects come in, and then you really see a different type of team. I mean, the big thing is obviously Matthew Schaefer, where if he's great or any of the prospects are great, then that really changes the dynamics of the team. But you're looking at that, not this season, maybe next season, where you're looking at that being a big thing. But they're going to be in that mix, and it's going to be an interesting one with the Rangers, the Blue Jackets, Flyers. All those teams are going to be probably a few points away, actually, at the end of the season from wild card versus not.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of. I think it's going to be very close right in the last couple months when you're looking at the Metro, and there are going to be, like you say, the teams that'll pull away, but it's just the murky middle, I guess. There's just so many teams in there right now in their development and retool, rebuild, whatever you want to call it with these teams. Okay, let's get into our quick fire round here and start with the biggest storyline or question mark going into the season. We mentioned a few of them, but what is your biggest one coming in?
Biggest one? Well, then I got to pick Dobson, or your defenseman, quarterback in the power play, your top scoring defenseman. Where's that coming from? When you trade Dobson, you just have that big void there. And you could probably dive into the process of the trade, but we don't have enough time for that. But I digress. That's the big question,
Yeah, and that's huge. I think Dobson, who's replacing, that's a lot of offense. I mean, what did he have? He didn't have it last season, but over 70 points a couple seasons ago. That's something.
He's had a few 13-goal seasons. Yeah. So that's a big thing, especially when you have the power play where you have someone who can get the puck on net, and that really makes a huge difference. Yeah, they don't have that now. So
no, at least not yet. I mean, Matthew Schaefer again can potentially be that. All right, breakout stars. Who do you have breaking out this season? There's few guys you can choose from, I guess.
Yeah, there's probably a few prospects I could choose. But if I have to pick someone who could really be like, oh yeah, we're noticing him as a star, I'll probably say, Romanov could be that star player where everyone knows he's a good stay-at-home defenseman. Maybe we see more from him. It's kind of like when you look at some of the players that started the Four Nations, when everyone saw how good some of these players were defensively, like Jacob Slavin or Zach Werenski or Brock Faber. Romanov could have that type of season defensively, and people are like, oh, wow, there's actually more here. And because he's their number one defenseman, they're leaning on him a lot. And he's the one that really everyone's like, oh wow, yeah, there's more here that I think people are noticing. Yeah, I think he's the breakout one. Yeah, I'll probably just stick with him. It's hard to, because we know so many of these players. It's hard to just be like, oh yeah, there's a breakout player here that can burst on the scene. Maybe Siplikov or Maxim Shabanov. Siplikov last season was there. It was a pleasant surprise, but if I have to pick one that I'm like, oh yeah, no, he could really break out, it's Romanov, and maybe it's same theme but younger. Isaiah George maybe could be a breakout candidate there.
For sure. And I do think Romanov has a bit more offense in his game than maybe he's shown so far in his career. So he might become more of a two-way guy this season now that he's pretty much put as the number one defenseman, at least right now. Mm-hmm. All right. Other side, someone that needs to bounce back this season. And again, the Islanders didn't make the playoffs. So of course, there's going to be guys that need to be better. Who falls into that category?
I mean, there seems like an obvious choice here, which is Anthony Duclair. Just like he's the big name. Everyone's going to be pointing him out as the bounce back player because he was brought in last offseason. Everyone was hoping he'd be that top line winger that rounded out the Barzal Horvat top line. And then at the end of the season, I think he was a healthy scratch and was not even on the roster to finish things out. So, and really had an uneventful season. So you're talking about up one player to bounce back, it's him. That he really needs that. And if I'm going to say a wild card few names to bounce back, it's a Palak and Polak. They both need a bounce back there. Just that duo. That's two that year. Otherwise, but the big one, obviously, Duclair, who wasn't even on the team at the end of the last season.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be. I know in this preview we did last year, they were like, Duclair's going to be the guy to be big part of the top six. Well, he never ended up really being that. So, definitely a guy to have to bounce back. All right, X factors. This could be a situation, player, whatever you want to go in this one. X factors.
X factors. I'm trying to think of what could be one of them. Well, I think a big X factor. Actually, there's two here that I'll throw out for a few reasons. I'll say Anders Lee and Jean Gabriel Pageau, because Anders Lee had a very good season last season, and I think he's 34, and he had a big season at this point in his career. You don't expect that from him, and it shows. And Jean Gabriel Pageau, same, where he could have a big year. They're both heading to free agency at the end of this season, and I think obviously they're going to be the trade candidates, the big trade assets. Anders Lee's probably the most valuable one. At the same time, you wonder, do you want to go through the Brock Nelson thing again, where you wait it out, and then you trade him, and obviously got a good return for Brock Nelson, but you're losing a face of the franchise type of player. And I think the Islanders want to keep Anders Lee around, maybe on a team-friendly deal. He's the one that is coming off a big season, and the question is whether he'll age well or not. He plays a very physical game. It took him a while, I think, to recover. He tore his ACL a few years ago, and it took him a while to get back to full strength, and now he's back to that. So you could see another big season from him, and teams are going to want an Anders Lee in their lineup. You look at a physical scoring presence that a lot of teams want for the playoffs. So if they want to trade him, they can get a big return for him. So he's really just an X factor just because his fate can decide a lot of like how the Islanders play out their season.
Yeah, those two guys potentially could be dealt at the trade deadline, depending on where the Islanders are with playoffs. So, and those guys could get some pretty big assets in return too. So, yeah, and it would change a lot because Anders Lee, he's been with the team forever. So he's a guy that definitely, and the captain too. Yeah. So, for sure. All right, let's talk. We've talked about some prospects here, but do you see anyone surprising, really, and making the team that you're not really expecting at this point? Islanders actually have a pretty good prospect system now. Couldn't say that probably even a season ago, but they're starting to look like they've got some exciting guys to watch. Do you see anyone surprising making the roster?
Yeah, they've got a lot of prospects now. That's the benefit to the Dobson trade, where as much as you maybe didn't want to trade him during the draft, or you trade him for the 17th and 16th overall picks. Mm-hmm. They have William Eklund, Kayshawn Aitchison. Those are I'll group them with Matthew Schaefer here and say that they're not the players that you're going to see this season or really make an impact this season, maybe next season or the season after that, especially Aitchison, Eklund, who are younger. The big prospects, I'd say, surprise. Cal Ritchie's the big one, and he's really the X factor prospect because he's one of those centers that can score. He's a scoring center who, if he makes it into the lineup and he can make it into a top 6 role, it really changes the dynamics of that forward unit. I think he's the one really to watch because he's that player who can make the difference. I think Cole Eiserman's another one, but he's, I think, going back to Boston College / if he makes an impact, it will have to be late in the season, which would be like April sort of which would be an April situation. So I wouldn't put him there, but Ritchie's the one. They got him back in the Nelson trade, and if he's in the lineup, even at midseason, and he's making a huge impact, it changes a lot for your team in general.
Yeah, I think, and he was pretty good in the NHL, whatever time he did get with the Avalanche there. So, he's going to be someone to watch for sure. Right, other prospects to watch. You mentioned a couple there. Are those the guys that everyone should be watching this season? Because that's what basically boosted the Islanders' prospect pool to being in the maybe upper tier, but way higher than they used to be.
Yeah. I feel like I just mentioned rattled off all the prospects to watch. I don't know. Am I missing any? I could mention prospects that are just maybe like to keep in mind, just because the Bridgeport Islanders were terrible last season. Yeah. I think I watched a lot of their home games, and they won one of the home games I was at. They won 4 all season. They were not a good team last season. So in terms of prospects to watch on that team, maybe you look at players because it's a new system. Matthew Darsh comes in, kind of taking over, and they have a new coach, Rocky Thompson. So maybe some players like Callie Odelius, who was a defenseman who struggled last season, looks better, or maybe Matthew Maggio or Alex Jeffries look good enough where they could all of a sudden be like, oh yeah, you could be a third line center at the NHL level. I don't see that as much. The big prospects are Cal Ritchie's a big one. I guess we could count Isaiah George, the prospect here. He's another. I mean, he's the big name in terms of he was on the NHL team last season. So if he comes in and is a regular there, then yeah, he can really make a difference. He could also be that two-way presence. So Ritchie and George are the big ones. And then obviously, of course, if Matthew Schaefer is on the team, then he's the big prospect. It's like Matthew Schaefer, there's the extremes of he's either in the OHL and we don't talk about him all season long, or he's on the NHL team and he's the big focus where it's how many minutes are we giving him? How's his development coming along? Is he an impact player from day one? So that's the overall rundown of their prospect system.
And what's great is they do have elite blue chip guys now, which they really hadn't had in previous years. So definitely a pool that we'll be watching a lot more closely throughout the season than probably have in the past. All right, this one could be an easy one. Some teams are easier with these. Is who's going to lead the team in scoring? So defense is going to be an interesting one because there's not an obvious one now. Who do you think will lead the team there?
I'm trying to think. In terms of points, I'm going to say Barzal. He's going to have the most points. He'll probably, if I had to guess, like a 20-60 or 20-70 split that's a lot of points there, or maybe more like 20-50. But either way, that he'll lead the team in points. I would say, actually, I'm going to go a little bit off on a limb. I was going to say Horvat leads them in goals. I'm going to say Anders Lee is going to lead them in goals and then gets traded. That could be why he gets traded. But if not, then he leads the team in goals, and it's like another big season for him. And then they have to extend him, or you can all of a sudden get a big contract. Defense, it's tough. It's slim pickings here. Part of me wants to say Schaefer just because if he's on the team, there's not a lot of two-way players. I'll probably say either Romanov or Pollock. If Pollock's healthy, because he'll probably get power play 2 minutes or play the power play 2 role, and he can get enough assists there. Enough. There's not going to be a lot of goals. It's going to be like who's going to get those assists, who's going to get those real hockey assists that are going to add up and be a lot of points. And I guess it's Polak or Omanov, one of those two. It's really hard to pick one there.
Yeah. Like I say, I think Schaefer's the obvious one if he's in the NHL and he hit right away. Then maybe. But yeah, I think it's probably between those two guys too. All right, let's finish with, I love doing these, is the bold predictions, hot takes. So what do you got for the Islanders this season?
Bold prediction, hot take. Oh, I'm got to think now. Got to think of a few, or maybe I'll just rattle off a few that could. What's funny about bold predictions is that you can't just do a regular prediction, which is bold. You have to do something that's like really out there. I'll do rattle off a few. Sorokin is a Vezina finalist. He hasn't been for a few seasons, but he's back in that conversation. So there's one there. Bold prediction 2 potentially is the Islanders are not good and Patrick Waugh is fired mid-season. That's a bold one. I feel like the only reason I can't say it's too bold or it's not going to happen is he wasn't a Jack Adams finalist in recent seasons, and really that's what gets you fired a few years later. Yeah. But I digress. Other bold ones is that the Islanders possibly, I'm trying to think of how another bold one is that Schaefer's on the team and wins the Calder and is he wins the Calder and leads the Islanders to one of the best records. And I guess let's do a parlay bold prediction where he does that. Cal Ritchie is also on the team, and then April, around that time of year when the college season ends, Cole Eiserman joins the team and they have all these young players there and there's a youth movement that really takes over. That's the parlay bowl prediction where one leads into the next and we're just going all in on that youth movement. So I just gave you a few. I know you asked for one, but there's just a few to throw out there.
Yeah, some good ones there. I was going to say, if you weren't going to say it, I was going to say Matthew Schaefer wins the Calder Trophy, but you got it. So there you go. It's going to be interesting to see how the Islanders go because, Schaefer's going to be the storyline throughout training camp and preseason. Seeing, does he look ready? He probably will get the 9-game trial for sure. And then they'll make the decision after that. But yeah, the Islanders are going to be an interesting one to watch this season. And not just as the NHL team, but prospects for the first time in a long time too. So yeah, it's going to be fun. So thanks, Mike, for coming on, talking the Islanders season coming up. We'll continue our previewing of the season as we continue our training camp. Training camps and stuff are starting, depending on when you're watching this, a couple weeks from now, whatever, or it could be going on as you're watching. But make sure checking out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We've got season preview content throughout the site, lots of stuff to read and lots of stuff to look at. So make sure checking all that out. But until our next preview, we will see you next time.